Much, Hans Jakob. It's wonderful to see you again. I want to commend you and your organization for the great work that you are doing. Of course, we've heard a lot from Katharina von Schnurbein, so I don't want to repeat too much, but let me just give you a sense of how things are from the European Jewish Association perspective. So as Katharina was outlining, this is the highest rises in anti-Semitism that have been seen, she said, since the formation of the EU. We would go even further and say this is the highest rises of anti-Semitism since the days leading up to the Kristallnacht. In some parts of Europe, documented cases of anti-Semitism where they have proper recording mechanisms, which we'll come to shortly, where they have is up over 1,000%. I mean, 1,000% is just insane. These are some of the numbers of reported cases of anti-Semitism, and that's already the numbers before the Hamas pogrom of October the 7th were already alarming, and now they've just gone stratospheric. And we're also seeing, actually, in the last couple of days, I don't know how many of the people the attendees have noticed, but the Jewish Agency being one of the main Jewish bodies responsible for looking after people who want to make Aliyah, that is, returning to Israel, have said that in some European countries, the rate is 355% higher than it was previously. When one stops to think about that, that's worth pause for thought, that some European Jews feel that it's safer to go to an Israel at war than it is to stay in Europe. So these are extremely worrying numbers. And yes, people are removing their kippot, people are taking off their mezuzot from their doors. Visibly Jewish people are wearing baseball caps. And I mean, there's countless cases. Let me just share a couple with you. I mean, Katharina mentioned Regina Sluzhny, who had a couple of her talks, A Hidden Child, a couple of talks, the lessons of the Holocaust, cancelled at Jewish schools because they were concerned that it would cause antagonism. In Belgium as well, we had some schools that were actively teaching their children that Israelis were deliberately killing children. We've had cases in Antwerp where schools wanted to do a sort of just a general event related to a Jewish school. They were refused entry to one of the main halls in Antwerp because they felt that they drew some kind of analogy with Israel, saying, what's going on in Israel is unbelievable and awful. Therefore, we can't have a Jewish school using our premises for fear of offending people. It's just an utterly horrific situation. In Holland, they've cancelled some Memorial Day events at universities over security concerns and because of vociferous remonstrations against the memorialization. There were protests when Israel's President Herzog opened a new Holocaust museum in Amsterdam. In Spain, even before the 7th of October, the Israeli ambassador was forced to take shelter in a room at a university as pro-Palestinian activists chased their entourage and security details. There are regular protests across Europe, week in, week out, where you can regularly see Nazi images referring to Jews, images that draw parallels between what's happening in Gaza and Auschwitz. You can read placards calling Jews terrorists. The blood libel has just been refreshed and now Jews are child killers again. We have death threats against rabbis. Any people who have served, any Jews that have served in the IDF are being outed in their communities through letter campaigns, pointing out to their neighbors that a murderer is living next door or a child killer is living next door. And even in some cases, flights arriving from Israel are being tracked and met by protesters. This is where we are in Europe today. Make no mistake, Zionism is a new anti-Semitism. And the problem with anti-Zionism is that, let me give you an example. It's fine, it's no longer fine if I'm walking in the street and somebody shouted at me, dirty Jew. I can report that to police, and the person that shouted dirty Jew, in theory, can be prosecuted. Whereas somebody can call me dirty Zionist with impunity and get away with it. The issue, and I really, really want to commend Katharina von Schnurbein here, who's put in a lot of hours and a lot of work into the EU strategy and her team. The EU strategy itself is great, and we really appreciate the updating of that strategy to include the words fostering Jewish life. We say in English that a smooth sea never made a good sailor. Well, basically since October the 7th, Katharina has braved this tidal wave of hate with us, and she's been utterly superb. The problem that you have isn't at an EU level per se, it's at a level which reaches down to member states. And there are, as Katharina rightly pointed out, there are large differences across Europe. Germany and Austria, as she said, are currently leading the way in cracking down on these new forms of anti-Semitism, and particular anti-Zionism. But there are other countries that are lagging significantly behind. I would say that Ursula von der Leyen, as well, the Commission President, really gets it when she said a dark shadow has returned to Europe. Let me touch briefly, because I'd really love to hear from some of the attendees before I myself have to go, but just to spend a brief couple of minutes talking about the IHRA definition. Now, the IHRA is the benchmark definition of anti-Semitism. It is exactly as Katharina outlined it. It's the one that fits most Jews' experience of what anti-Semitism is, including anti-Zionism, and but it shouldn't be up for debate. Unfortunately, at the moment, we're in a situation where some universities, places of education, even some governments, regard the IHRA definition as somehow community.
Alex, you seem to be stuck. Maybe turn off your camera, because at least at my end, I only get like every second sentence now. Happens sometimes on Zoom. No, don't worry. Just if you turn off the camera, it's much less data flow, and then we should have the full sound again. Alexander, Marco, do we still have Alex with us?
I do apologize. I hope, is that any better?
No, sound is back. Sound is back. Perfect. So luckily it worked.
I'm sorry about that. So, you get?
Oh, Alex, your connection is real bad. I don't know what happened. Alex, if you can hear me, I think at this point, the only thing we can do is if you log in and log out again.
You'd like me to do that? I'll log in and log
Oh,
out.
okay, wait. Now it's back again. I don't know what happened. Okay, now your sound is back. So hopefully the storm has passed.
Yeah, I hope so. So look, I'll keep the video off if that's okay, because maybe that's slowing down the slowing
sound,
down. So I was talking about the IHRA. So basically,
yes.
Let me be brief.
And you had the university. The point about the universities was still there, and then you froze.
Okay, so basically, you have people trying to decide what is a fair or what isn't a fair definition of what anti-Semitism is. Look, it's crazy when people are trying to tell Jews what anti-Semitism is and what anti-Semitism isn't. We're best placed to know what it is. It's not that we're trying to shut down free speech. It's just that we know what it is. Now, the problem with the IHRA definition, shortly after October the 7th, Dr. Schindler, we had an issue. We convened our Jewish Leaders Council. And most of a feeling about the IHRA definition was it's not worth the paper it's printed on. Why is it not worth the paper it's printed on? Not that it doesn't not have merit or isn't a fair barometer of what anti-Semitism is. It's just that all of the signatories to it and everyone who signed up to it since October the 7th has done absolutely nothing about it or hasn't bothered to implement any of the very principles which they've signed up to. And that is self-evident in the protests, in the Metropolitan Police in London, for instance, who said that flying a swastika at an anti-Israel was context dependent. This is when you're seeing Auschwitz symbols, Israel as child killers, effigies of Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israelis with hooked noses dripping in blood, the kind of stuff that we last saw in the of Sturmer, and people are getting away with it. So the sense of it is, unless the EU strategy is a very good strategy, but unless it trickles down to member state level, unless the member states are willing to do what countries like Austria and Germany are prepared to do and call a spade and say, actually, we make no differentiation between what anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism is. These are two sides of the same coin. Then we're not going to be able to stem this tide. In the same way that a dodgy accountant will look for loopholes in the tax code, an anti-Semite will look for loopholes in legislation. And that's why they can call me a dirty Zionist with impunity, but they can't call me a dirty Jew anymore. And until the police get proper training, until national governments are prepared to bring the principles of the IHRA definition and bring it into member state law in terms of hate speech legislation, then it's hard to see the situation getting better. So I think, despite the technical difficulties, I've made myself reasonably clear, and I'm here to answer any questions you have. Thank you again for the opportunity.